because I'm not just Peter Parker. I'm Spider-Man.
Brand New Day is the newest Spider-Man movie, and it stars Tom Holland and also Sadie Sink, as well as a lot of other familiar faces. The movie follows Peter Parker as he now lives his life solely as Spider-Man, because everyone forgot who Peter Parker is. We see the toll that's taken on him, as while the city is doing great and he's doing great as Spider-Man, he doesn't really have much of a life as Peter Parker. He hasn't made any new friends since he lost MJ and Ned. But all of that changes as he faces a new villain that can seem to jump from person to person and controls their mind. And that's pretty much all I can really say without getting into too much spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet, I would definitely recommend you check it out. But yeah, to address the elephant in the room, the villain ends up being Jean Grey, played by Sadie Sink, which I thought was a pretty cool inclusion, to use an X-Men character before they become an X-Men as an antagonistic force. Because throughout all the Fox era X-Men movies, and also just in the comics in general, we see that the mutants, and by virtue of that, the X-Men, are often targeted by like government officials. So it's kind of cool to have that storyline, but also interweaved with the Spider-Man story. And I thought that kind of set the tone for what the X-Men are going to be like in the future of the MCU. But beyond that, one of the things I loved about this movie was the action. I thought the director, Destin Daniel Cretton, has a real good eye for action. As we saw with Shang-Chi, I think that bus fight still stands as some of the best choreography, at least, that we've seen in the MCU. And we see a lot of great choreography in this movie too, between the fights that occur between Punisher, Spider-Man and the Hulk, and Spider-Man versus the Hand. I think one of the things that really emphasizes good choreography is the creativity and thought process they put into it. You can see them setting up a lot of interesting stuff early on, but also the logic that follows in the fight scene from one event to the next to the next to the next, instead of it just being kind of a mindless mash of different things. For example, when Spider-Man and the Hulk were fighting, and then Spider-Man was swinging around inside through the windows, and he was webbing up the Hulk through the windows, and then eventually the Hulk broke through, but then it caused all the rubble to be connected to the Hulk, and it was kind of cutting through his skin. Just like instances like that, I think were really interesting to see, as well as Spider-Man using the Electro Fist again. That was kind of cool, kind of felt almost like a throwback or like a reference to the Spider-Man games, or all his different gadgets, such as the spider grenade. That was cool to see, and that felt very much like the Insomniac video games. But beyond the action, I thought there was a lot to like in this movie. One of the main things being that it felt like one of the most comic book superhero movies I've seen in a long time. And to me, this is due to the fact that the world feels very lived in, which I liked. Because one of the things that we see a lot in comic books are characters that belong in that universe kind of just showing up randomly in any given character's story. Like an example would be in this movie, Spider-Man has a mutation problem. He's not just going to go to any biologist or scientist. He's going to go to Bruce Banner, the Hulk, because he's one of the few people that understands this and who he feels like he can trust. And I think that the level of connectiveness is something that has been missing from not only just Marvel movies, but just superhero movies in general, where it almost feels like they're too afraid to pull on these different characters. And it also might just because it's more expensive to pay for all these different famous actors. It's something we saw in the Superman movie last year with Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific. And I thought that was great. It's nice to see this new trend of them just casually bringing in these different characters to fill out the world. Because in this one we had the Hulk, Black Widow, Punisher, and obviously Jean Grey as the villain. And to me, that helps make the world feel much more lived in and connected. Although one of the downsides of that, because I do think that this is a little bit of a double-edged sword, is the fact that while you do get all of that, it does become a little bit harder to balance all the stories present. And that's one of the things that I would say is one of the weaker points for this movie. It's doing a lot. It's got a lot to juggle. Because number one, it's got to be a sequel to No Way Home and follow up on the storyline that movie presented with Spider-Man making the wish so that everyone forgot who Peter Parker was. So they're stealing a lot with that and the fallout and consequences of that, as well as now has to introduce Jean Grey and introduce her motives and why she's doing what she's doing. Also, even before that, just the mystery of who is this person and why is she a threat, and establishing all of that. And it has to deal with the last thing, which is Peter's mutation. So all those three different things tie together, and they do a pretty good job at jumping between the three of them. But there are times, especially towards the end, when it just feels like there's almost like two different movies going on. But to the movie's credit, both movies, while it does feel a little bit disjointed, are movies that I do like. So like, I don't really mind jumping from the Jean Grey movie to the No Way Home sequel. One of the things I thought about while watching this movie is that most superhero movies don't take place around this time in a character's career. There's this weird trend with superhero movies I noticed where they so often take place like either super early in the character's career, like the first year or two, where they're just getting their feet wet and they're like just getting used to being a superhero and like no one really knows who they are, or it takes place at the end of their career when they've been retired for like 10 years, where they're thinking about hanging it up. They're just thinking like, can I really still do this? You know, I'm gonna go out for one last fight. And I don't know why that is. Like, it's so strange to me that like they either have to be like just starting out, or they gotta be like debating on whether or not they should hang it up. It's so different than the comic books, because comic books have what they call a second act problem, where a character will get an established origin that will be their origin for like 10 to 20 years, maybe even more sometimes. And then you can never get the ending of a character's story. I mean, like, sure, sometimes you can, sometimes characters die, but for the most part, characters don't really ever end. So all superhero characters kind of take place in this kind of middle ambiguous era where they're just kind of constantly in this 20 to 30-year-old age range where they're just in the prime of their career forever. The movies do the exact opposite, where we never really see the heroes in their prime. This is one where I feel like we actually get to see that, which is kind of fun, where the city's not getting used to him, where they're not like, oh my god, he's finally back. It's just like, no, yeah, we know who Spider-Man is and we love Spider-Man. And he's good at being Spider-Man. And there is like that obvious thing that I was talking about with him having to deal with his mutation, but that's just like another adventure in his life. He's never like ever thinking like, oh, does this mean I have to quit being Spider-Man now? Like, should I give it up? So I like that part. That was kind of refreshing to finally see, because you kind of see that with the Avengers. Like, the first one was them starting out. The second one, they're starting to show cracks in division. And not even by the third one, just by Captain America 3, they're already like divided and they fell apart. Like, it just happens a lot. Like, they can never have the characters just be in their prime. So I thought, once again, that was one of the stronger parts, at least for me, as like a really big comic book nerd, that I enjoyed a lot, just to see like him interact with all these different characters and how he affects these characters. But I honestly think that kind of speaks to the overall theme of the movie, and that kind of goes back to the idea of it feeling like there's just two disjointed movies kind of connected together. Both good movies, but still two movies. And one message of the movie felt like it was about learning to accept yourself. Even if there's parts of you that you don't like, you should still learn to accept that part of yourself. That's a pretty cool moral and a pretty good lesson, I think. While the other lesson the movie's trying to convey is the importance of community and connecting with people and being open and not shutting yourself off from the rest of the world. And I think one of them may be more of a character arc for Spider-Man, while the other one is more the overall message of the story. But I feel like this one was more universal for all characters. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about how he affects his world around him. He thought that he could just isolate himself from the rest of the world and he could just only be Spider-Man and put on the mask and not really interact with people. But the movie goes to great lengths to show that that's not really healthy, and it's definitely not a choice that you should make if you can help it. And I think that's shown really well with the Punisher's inclusion, which is, once again, is why this movie doesn't feel like too overly crowded at times, because for as many characters as there are in it, they all serve a purpose. Punisher's purpose is being kind of a dark reflection of what Peter could end up being if he's not careful, and why he shouldn't be that. Because as he says in the movie, Spider-Man says that he's just like Frank, he just wants to work alone. But Punisher is quick to point out that it's not as if that he's pushing away people that love him because he's able to. He misses his family. He like loves his family. He like wishes he could get them back. And if he could just, as he said, like get just one day back with them, he would do it. Which is something that like Peter can do. Peter could go to his friends and kind of talk to them again, but he's choosing not to because he's afraid at the end of the day because he lost Aunt May. And that's kind of the interesting thing about it, which is that I guess it goes back to the community side. You can't let past trauma and pain, even if it's really like justified and valid, you shouldn't let that keep you from living your life. You shouldn't let that stop you from continuing to make connections, because if you just isolate yourself and push other people away, you're never gonna heal or get better. And that's something that Peter has to learn. Eventually, the beautiful thing about it is that he's able to convey that message after he learns it to Jean Grey, the antagonist. Well, and I thought that was really well shown from a visual standpoint, because what's so interesting is that she goes into his mind to try and mess things up and see what's going on, but she ends up getting a message from Aunt May that was delivered to Peter, obviously, and was the message that kind of shaped his life and was fundamental for him right now in that moment, and was something he held on to at that point in his life. And what's so cool about that is it works metaphorically in a way, because there's so many people that influence anyone's life, and there's so many moments that change who you are for the better, and that then resonates and kind of carries on with people, hopefully, and carrying that message on to other people. But in this way, we got to see that literally happen with him carrying on Aunt May's lesson to Jean Grey. I thought that was really cool, just to see that message get carried from Aunt May to Peter to Jean, and show how impactful human connection can be. It's kind of like that expression, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with others. I think that's a great way to follow up on the previous movie, but also I think it's a great lesson to have in a superhero movie. because it shows that, and this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but you don't have to wear a mask or have powers or even necessarily even fight crime to be a hero. Sometimes all you need to do to be a hero is to be there for people and to check in on them and just to talk and to have that to be that kind of support system and to help other people. And that sometimes is just enough. But that's just me. What do you guys think? Did you like the movie? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments down below. Please leave a like if you can, and check out some of my other videos. I got a couple other ones that talk about movies, comic books, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. And if you're new here, welcome to the channel. I'm Jimmy and I study media. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.